In this video, I'm upgrading my K40 laser machine by Cloudray with this VMS Tech controller board that's Lightburn compatible. And there's even going to be some bonus material of installing a current meter and an air solenoid to control the air assist on and off through Lightburn software. Welcome to the Laser Channel, where we learn, create, and share. My name is Greg. In this video, I'm going to breathe some new life into my Cloudray K40 machine. I love the components in the machine. I love the build quality. However, the controller board is wildly outdated. In fact, the application software that comes with the machine, I can't even install this on my modern computer. It just simply won't load. So I'm going to finally fix that so that with the VMS Tech controller board, I'll be able to run Lightburn software. This controller board is going to be compatible with most of the K40 machines on today's market, as well as ones made from years ago. I chose the LX2b controller board. It's perfect for my K40 machine because all the connections match up perfectly to my machine. For those of us with ribbon cable connection, they've got us covered with this connector on the side. The green connection on the side is going to be for the air solenoid so that Lightburn can control the air assist on and off. On the other end of the board, I can use this external power supply port, or I can use the power connector coming from my K40 machine. And lastly, the USB connection. That's easy to spot. This board does have a lot of cool features on it. In fact, I'll have a link down below so that you can check out all the details on the board and the other accessories. Before I get started, there's going to be a couple things I'm going to do that make my life so much easier during the installation of the controller board, starting out with pre-testing the machine. I already did that off camera, did a little mini project, verified the machine as it is in its stock form works correctly. The next that I'm going to do is I like to completely remove the power cable from the machine itself. This way I don't have any electrical accidents during the installation. And lastly, when I go to remove the electrical connections off of the old controller board behind this panel, I am going to label what those wires or those connectors are. I'm going to have the power, I'm going to have the X-axis motor, the Y-axis motor, and a connector that has the homing switches. That is going to make it really easy for me just to plug those cables directly into the new controller board. Along the way, I'm also going to be referencing the very detailed manual for the controller card. I'm going to jump in and start taking a look and labeling the wires off of the old controller board. My controller board is tucked just inside and it has a plastic case over it. I'm not sure if we'll be able to see it on camera, but all of the ports are labeled on this plastic case. If your machine isn't labeled, take a closer look at the controller board. Oftentimes they'll label on the board itself what each of these ports go to. And if you don't have that, you'll have to take the wires and trace them back through the machine to find out where they go. Most K40 machines are going to have the controller board mounted to a panel, and that panel is then mounted up to the rest of the machine. I'm going to remove that panel so that everything comes out all in one piece. A couple of screws later, and I've got the entire assembly out. I'll get the old controller removed and the new one installed. I'm going to make sure that the USB ports match up rather closely. That way the connector cable can access through the machine up to the controller board. A few minutes later and the board is bolted down to the panel. I also made sure that I put some little spacers underneath the board and the panel. That way these connectors don't short out. And now I know many of you already know to do that, but for people like me that get carried away bolting things together, this is something very easy to skip that's going to cause problems later on if I don't have those spacers underneath. We'll get a nice close-up of the board, and we're going to see that all of the connectors are very clearly labeled, and since this board is outside of the machine, it's going to be a perfect opportunity to take those cables I labeled earlier and get them all plugged in to the correct spots. And I think since I'm here, I am going to wire in the solenoid. However, I'm going to take this top piece off. That way it's going to make it much easier to get this tested out later on. Well, since we're taking a look at the solenoid, we're going to see that the connector is originally put on, and it's going to be blocking this air port. So once I pull the connector off, already got it loosened up, I can dump this long screw out and I can push some of the wire lead back in there, and I can actually push out this piece that's inside, and I can rotate this around. And now when I put it back on, now the connector wire is going to face the other way, and I've got all this room on this port. A quick reference to the manual for the controller board, and I've got the solenoid wired up to this green connector. This is all set, and now the panel can be reinstalled back inside the machine. The board's all installed, everything looks great. Now it's time to power up the laser machine and connect up to Lightburn software. This is pretty exciting. I'm gonna get the machine powered up for the very first time with that new controller card. And once that looks good, I'm gonna connect the computer up to the machine and we're going to get Lightburn configured. Now, a couple things before I do that. We are going to see me operating the laser machine with the lid closed and the lid open throughout the rest of the video. That's going to be for a couple of reasons. The first one being, well, we'll now be able to see what's going inside of the machine, along with the main control panel is underneath the lid. The other reason is on this machine, Cloudray decided that the lid did not need a safety switch for some strange reason, meaning that I can open the lid while the machine is running and it's not going to stop. I'm going to fix that, but that's going to be a project for a different day and a different video. Now, with all that covered, the big moment, we'll turn the power switch on, and I'm going to check out the controller board, and I'm seeing green lights on the board, which always is a good thing. When I look inside the machine, I have the red dot lasers on just as it should be, so far everything's looking great. During the installation of the controller board or the setup of Lightburn software, if I have any questions, there's a number of ways that I can get answers to my questions. Starting out with probably the best resource is the user manual for the controller board. I'll put a link to that down in the video description for you. I can also directly email VMS Tech, and they also have a Facebook page as well. I've got the manual pulled up for setting up Lightburn on the controller board, and what I'm going to do is just go through and follow this detailed step-by-step instruction on getting the computer and Lightburn fully configured up to the controller board and making sure it's working correctly with my laser machine. We can see it is very detailed and it goes through step by step. When I first looked at this, I thought it was a little bit overwhelming, but actually it's just very detailed, so I'm sure it's going to answer all of my questions. I'm going to take a look at this and join back up with you in just a minute. All right, it's been a few minutes and I think things are working pretty good between Lightburn and the machine. Let's go and check it out. I can go over to the Move tab and I can hit the Home button and the machine homes correctly. It'll do one axis first and then go over to the other axes. That looks perfect, and now I can hit the Move buttons here and the machine moves correctly. In fact, I can even draw a box in the workspace and hit the Frame button and the machine follows it correctly. Pretty neat. When I was going through that, the setup with Lightburn to the machine, the controller card, it really didn't take that long at all. I did find a couple spots here and there where when I did something, it didn't do what it was supposed to do. And that's when I went back to the manual and I reread the step and I forgot something. When I did that step correctly, things on the machine and the controller card worked correctly. Throughout the setup of the controller card, the manual is going to talk about going to the console tab and typing in some very, very basic lines of code, and I'm not very good at writing or even copying code, so I found a really neat workaround for this, and that's like, let's say right here, I need to enter this in. I can simply highlight it and copy it, and then I can go over to Lightburn software, go on that console tab, and then I can paste that. So I don't actually have to do any typing. I just need to reference the user manual, copy the parts that I need, and then paste them into Lightburn software. I don't think it gets any easier than that. Normally in a video like this, I would show step by step exactly what I'm doing in the Lightburn software to get the machine set up. But because this is a K40 machine, there are so many different variations of these machines. These have been made for a number of decades, and there's a lot of minute little differences between a lot of them on the market. The manual for setting up the Lightburn software is going to show you what you need to know for your specific machine. And that's why I chose not to show you what I'm doing, because it may not pertain to your particular setup. I'm now at the part of the user manual where they recommend installing one of these current meters, and this is to calibrate the output of Lightburn software up to the machine so that the machine is operating within the correct limits for the power going out to the laser tube. On the back of the meter, there's going to be two little terminals on there, and the laser tube is going to have two wires going up to it. It's going to have a thick red wire going up to it. We're going to leave that one alone. The other wire is going to be either typically a blue wire like I have, or more commonly a black wire. It too is going to be relatively small. What we're going to do is find that wire, trace it back to the power supply for the laser tube, and we're going to disconnect it and install it up to one terminal, and off the other side of the terminal, run a wire up to the one that we just unplugged from the laser power supply. Once again, the user manual shows all of that, and there's also a standalone user manual from the VMS Tech website that shows you specifically how to install one of these current meters. I'll be back in just a second once I have that complete. And of course, disconnect the power cord from the machine. I thought I'd take a quick second and show you the wire connections for the amp meter. And to do that, we're going to take a look at the laser tube. This is going to be that thick red wire that I had talked about. We're going to leave that one alone. Instead, we're looking at the thin wire that's on the output of the laser tube. And that is typically going to be a black wire. Mine we're going to see here is blue. I actually traced that all the way back through the machine up to the laser power supply right down there. I disconnected it and found that I had a lot of extra wire, so I was actually able to cut the wire and reuse it. I think this is a good view of the current meter. This side here is the plus side, and this wire is the wire that goes actually up to the laser tube itself. The other side of the wire is going to be this shorter piece, and this is the piece that's going to go back down to the power supply. The installation of the current meter looks great, and now it's time to jump back into Lightburn software and calibrate the laser output. While I am going to be doing the calibration of the laser output just off camera, I did want to show you the manual for the controller board on what they recommend for the best setup. On a 40-watt laser machine like this one, they do recommend that the total output of 12 milliamps to protect the laser tube and make sure that we get long life out of the system. The rest of the directions are going to go through on the premise that we are setting up for a 12 millivolt maximum output, and it just goes through the settings step by step. It's all pretty straightforward, and I'll be back in just a minute once that's all complete. Since I was away, I got two really cool things completed. The first one being, of course, the laser tube is now calibrated to Lightburn software. And Lightburn, when I type in 100% laser power, the maximum output is now 12 milliamps, just as I intended. The other thing that I did is I set up the air assist solenoid, which was super easy. I'm going to loop back to the calibration of the laser tube. I'm going to show you the area that I was making those adjustments. Let's check that out now. Within the machine settings, there's going to be this parameter, $35 and $36. The first one, number 35, is going to control how much laser is firing at the start and the end of drawing a line or a shape or engraving. that is typically set between 1 and 5. I put it at 2. Number 36 or S36 is going to be the overall power output of the laser tube. This number was originally 100 and it's way down here at 9, which is why it's so important to calibrate the laser machine with Lightburn software. See, if I had that set at 100, even when I set in Lightburn the power level down at 25%, it's still going to be basically overdriving the laser tube, drastically shortening the life, along with I'm just really not going to have a lot of variation in the output of the laser when I go to create projects. And again, this is all covered step by step in the manual for the controller card. The setup of the air solenoid once wired into the controller board is super simple. For this, I navigate over to device settings and I just make sure that air assist is selected on M7. Once I select that, it's all set, and in fact, I can test that out right now. I'll make sure that the air is on, and when I hit the start button, I can see that the light is on the solenoid. And I can turn that off, and now when I rerun the same line project, it does not turn on. So this allows me to connect my own air compressor up to the solenoid so I get a lot more airflow through the air assist nozzle. All I'd have to do is just put the air fittings that are included, making note of the airflow direction going from in to out. There's one more thing that I did before I'm ready to start making my first project with this updated K40 machine, and that has to do with when the machine is on but it's not running, I want the laser head to be held in place, always under control of the controller board. For this, in Lightburn, I navigate over to the console tab and I type in $40 equals 1. This is going to allow the motors to basically lock the laser head in place instead of having that freewheel around. The reason why I like to have the laser head locked in place is after a project, the laser head will go back to wherever it's going to go, and then it just relaxes. Now, if the belts have a little bit of memory, it's going to rock the laser head a little bit, and the laser machine isn't going to know that, and it's going to use that as the new starting point for the next engraving or the next cutout. If you're doing a project where you're only doing one pass, this really doesn't show up, but I found when I'm working with a new material and I'm doing multiple passes, but the machine is stopping in between, and I add that extra pass, the machine isn't starting from that same point, and when I'm doing a cutout, the cutout lines are going to be off just a little bit. Locking that laser head is going to eliminate that issue forever. Installation of that controller card and the accessories of that current meter and that air solenoid for the air assist, it goes very smoothly just as long as I don't skip any steps in the user manual. As long as I follow the steps, I'm going to get great results. And now it's time for the super exciting part of running the first project on the updated machine. The material that I'm going to be using is solid pine board that's going to be 10 millimeters thick or 3/8 of an inch in freedom units. I'll get this placed in the machine with the focus set, and we'll go into Lightburn and check out the graphic. I have my graphic loaded in, and let's check it out. This is a nice looking dog with some mountains in the background and some majestic lines coming off of it. That is going to be an engraving layer, and we'll check out the settings. I'm going to try 250 millimeters per second at a power level of 40%. With a lines per inch at 300, or those of you on metric, it's going to be a line interview of 0.0847 millimeters. And I do have overscan turned on. The red line around this is going to be a cut layer that is set at 10 millimeters per second at a power level of 80%. And I'm going to try 2 passes to start with, and we'll see how that turns out. And of course, now that I can lock that laser head in place, if I have to go back and add more passes, I know that the laser is going to follow that original cut line exactly. engraving looks great. We'll see if it cut all the way through. Oh, and it did. I thought I'd have to add more passes. Here we are. We'll get another close-up look at this. A quick wash with some LA's Totally Awesome has this project looking awesome. And check out all of this great engraving detail and just how clean the cutout is. I would say that the installation of the controller board was a success. Thanks for joining me in this video as I installed that new VMS Tech controller card to breathe some life into this old K40 machine. Being able to use Lightburn software is a real joy when creating projects. And speaking of joy, I had a lot of fun creating today's content for all of you. If you enjoy this content, show it some love by giving it a like, subscribe to the channel, or ring that notification bell. Not only is it a great way to help this channel grow, it's an awesome way to connect video content like this with other great viewers just like yourself. And until we meet again in the next video, learn, create, and share.